And welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Peace here. Hi, David. Welcome.
Good morning.
Glad you're hanging in. Here goes. All right. So this is where we left things, and this major Rashi, probably can I say the term the most major Rashi we've come across in trying to describe the Ephod. And by the way, he is going to do it a second time, trying to get into even more detail. So here we are. So he had described it, remember, as basically an apron, that it's similar to an apron that noble women wear when they're riding a horse. And all right, we can keep going. And he tries to define this word ephod and to find other examples of the word ephod in the Bible. That's what he's trying to do in order to try and describe it. Ve'od omer li libi. So this is where he's saying, in my humble opinion, this is what I'm led to believe. My heart tells me, my heart instructs me. Sheyesh ra'aya, that there is proof, there's a proof, shehu min levush, that in fact it is a type of garment, shetirgem Yonatan, because Yonatan, this is the, in the Torah, we read Onkelos' Aramaic translation, and in the Navi, in the Nevi'im, in the section called the prophets, the Targum that they use is called Targum Yonatan. There are, by the way, other Targumim that are extant. At any rate, the David, here we go, the David Chakur Ephod, that's in Samuel, 2 Samuel, it says that he was girded with an ephod, bod, that's part of it, that's also linen, and he translates that into Aramaic as kardut de butz, all right, a tunic with sleeves of linen, butz is linen. Vetirgem kamochen, and likewise he translates me'ilim, he translates the word me'il, which is like a cloak, right? Kardutin. B'ma'aseh Tamar, in the incident involving Tamar, this is the one that's in the book, the second book of Samuel, with Tamar, where she is raped by her half brother, Achot Avshalom, who was the sister of Avshalom. Avshalom actually kills the man who does that to her. Kichein till Bashan Benot Hamelach, that is Habetulot Me'ilim, right? So that it explains that those daughters of the king who were virgins wore these Me'ilim, and he translates it as this kardut. Umeil, and he goes on, Rashi goes on to explain, Umeil, this term me'il, hikamin chaluk. It's a type of shirt or a robe, v'chein haktonet, and likewise this term ktonet. Ela shehaktonet, but the difference between the me'il and the ktonet, this shehaktonet samuch levesaro, that the ktonet is right on the skin. It's an undergarment. Ume'il, and a me'il karui chaluk ha'elyon, and the cloak is described as the outer garment, the outer robe. Tashbetz, he goes again trying to analyze these words to help us understand what's going on. So tashbetz, we've talked about this before, and I described it as a checker work, right? Asuyin mishbatzot. It is made as checkers, and I was looking at the translations, and he inserts a word quilted, and it's helpful because when I am able to get that illustration that I mentioned, you'll see how it's indented, and Rashi can describe it, that the fabric is woven in such a way that there are these square indentations, these sort of checkered indentations in the fabric, lenui for beauty, as a decoration. V'hamishbatzot hem kamin gumot, and these mishbatzot are like indentations. Ha'osuyot, so there is another place where we see the mishbatzot, and they're made b'tachshitei zahav. You can see them in gold jewelry, lemoshav kviyat avanim, as a setting for stones. So you have these, he's allowing us to sort of imagine to ourselves what this looks like, that when they put a stone in jewelry and they use the gold to set up the stone so that it doesn't move. Avanim tovim, precious stones. Umargaloyot, and pearls. Kamoshin emar ba'avnei ephod. It's also referred to regarding the stones of the ephod. Musabot, it uses the term, the Torah uses the term musabot mishpatzot zahav, surrounded by these mishpatzot, settings of gold. Excuse me. Uvalaz, okay, in this medieval French, Corinne Auto Caston. It's called a caston, and keston, I believe, would be the word for checker, a type of square, that square setting. And now, the next word, these are these various garments that are mentioned here in this verse. A mitznefet is a turban, Kamin kipat kova. I know that Safaria translates kova as a helmet. I checked up the word mitznefet and it's snif in the, and even this kova. And yes, it can be translated as helmet, but another translation is definitely turban, and that's in the Jastrow dictionary. So it's a type of domed turban, shekorin kufia, coif maybe, I don't know. But the Yiddish, there's a German term mitzah, and mitzah means cap in German.
There's also an Arabic wrap called a kafia.
That's right. Although as far I know that it isn't worn as a turban though, but they have, remember those rings,
right?
That they
and here, and in fact, the Chabad translates it as dome-shaped hat.
Okay, that's the kippah. A kippah, actually, that we turn, the little hat that we wear, that we
well, it could be a lot of things. I mean, the turban could form a dome. A helmet, it can be a dome. A kafia with a ring on it can have a dome.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was referring to the term we use for our yarmulke, that we call a kippah, and it's called a kippah because it's domed. It's a little dome, if you think about its shape. So that's what we call a kippah. That's the term. Shahare b'makom acher, indeed, in another place, koreh lahem migbaot. They're referred to as migbaot, umektargaminan kovain, and they are translated there as a kova, as a turban. He says you can find this described in the tractate Yoma. Va'avneit. So again, these are not common words at all. Hi chagura. It's a type of belt al haktonet that is placed on that undershirt, that undergarment there. Ephod, and the ephod, hi chagura, and the ephod serves as a belt al ha'me'il, on the robe, on the cloak. That's that outer cloak, remember? As we see in the order of which they're put on. So later on, it says how Aaron is dressed, gives the order of his being dressed. And the quote is, "Vayiten alav et haktonet." He places upon him the ketonet, that shirt, that undershirt. Vayachgor oto ba'avneit, and he ties it with the avneit, with the sash. Vayilbash oto et hama'il. He then places the ma'il, the cloak, on him. Vayiten alav et ephod, and then he places the ephod on top of that. Bigdei kodesh, sacred garments, and he says mitruma hamekudeshet lishmi. The reason why it's interesting that he says, but their sanctity comes from the fact that they are from the truma, from this gift of the part of the Israelites that they dedicate to my name. Yasuatam, that's what they need to be made from. So when you see a long Rashi, generally speaking, it means we're looking at stuff that's difficult, that's not easy to interpret. And that's why he has to be unusually lengthy. Rashi is also known for his being circumspect. But there's going to be other long Rashis in this section because trying to describe the clothing is not an easy task. So we're still being told here about the nature of the gift, right? This whole the parsha the previous parsha started off with the various component parts of the tabernacle, and they described the construction of the tabernacle, and now they're talking about the component parts of the clothing. Okay, vahem yikhu et hazahav, they should take the gold, the et hatchelet, and the blue, the et ha'argaman, and the purple, the tolat hasheni, and the crimson yarns, the et hashesh, and the linen. Let's see if there's any. Vahem yichu, right? So who's the they that we're talking about? Otam chachmei lev, those skilled workers, she asu habagadim, that would create the clothing. Yikablu min hamitnavim, they should accept them from the donors. Et hazahav, the gold, and the purple, the blue, lasot mehen et habagadim, in order to fabricate the clothing. So again, just detailing out. So here we have, by the way, another extremely long Rashi. Look at this, all the way through to here.
So I have a question. The entire process here, describes something extremely ornate, right? There's a lot of detail here, and it's very ornate, and also, to a large extent, valuable, right? It takes a lot of time, effort in order to construct, the garments themselves, right, that are going to be worn, right? And there's obviously items in them that are of value. So my question here was, what was the point of is it the point just to elevate the priest above, or what is the point of creating this elaborate garment that's going to take an immense amount of time and resources in order to be able to construct, right? Not to mention the fact that it probably has to be guarded because it's valuable, right? So somebody from outside may want to steal it, right? Not not necessarily for So anyway, that's the Rashi details it and gives great detail around kind of the construction of it, but it's not necessarily clear what the intent or purpose is in that respect. Or maybe I'm missing something.
Right. So I think one looks at human behavior in general, and the function of the high priest basically is to represent the Jewish people. He is going to represent all the Israelites. And just as in state, when you look at affairs of state in regular governments, you notice that, for example, the house where the president lives or the king lives is a palace, that the clothing and the garments, because it is a way, I believe, of both showing love. In other words, that one is willing to be generous, to be extremely generous, is one of the ways in which we show love, and another way is to show respect. After all, this is being done for God. And how does a human being, there's certainly statements in Isaiah, for example, a beautiful, I'm not sure if it's the very last chapter of Isaiah, where Isaiah says, in the name of God, the heavens are my throne and the earth is my footstool. Where can you build a house that is going to contain me? And he goes on to explain what that house is supposed to be, which has to do with having a broken spirit, a willingness to humble yourself before God. You have to look at the Isaiah itself. He puts it much better than I can. But the idea here is to glorify Hashem. That's what they're trying to do. And again, out of love, both love and respect, it's a very human way of expressing it. We aren't, of course, just limited to verbal communication. We know that clothing impacts very, very deeply on a nonverbal and emotional basis. That's why you have military uniforms. They're designed precisely, or police uniforms, they're precisely designed to create a certain level of fear and stuff like that. Here, the high priest was trying to express divine love and divine forgiveness. In fact, every article of his clothing, every one of these garments was supposed to represent a particular kind of infraction in type of sin for which God was going to need to forgive us, where human beings required forgiveness.
So, and I think that it's also, in addition to elevation and the symbolism, but it's also because it's complex and detailed, and you need to gather particular precious elements. So it gives opportunity for the people who are not the priests to serve as well. It gives them, and the fact that it takes a lot of detail means it takes a lot of focus on the part, and a lot of exertion, at least, mentally, on the part of the people who are making these garments, and they have a way then of serving God and of being directly, related to this work.
I agree. I think you make a very good point. And let me take that a step further. And that is that since we can't actually make these kinds of things, we are actually given equal merit for the fact that we're studying it and taking our time and struggling with trying to understand it, that is equally a service that we're doing. And I think what our culture doesn't get across to us is the love that the Jewish people and the appreciation that the Jewish people had for being able to construct a Mishkan and a temple, that this was a sort of, how can I put it, a palatable expression of the relationship, the loving relationship that God had with the Jewish people and by extension with humanity. And what Rashi is doing in our studying this in the Torah, and then studying Rashi and there's also a tremendous amount of material that goes into detail over the temple service, etc., is a way of keeping alive, despite the fact that the temple has been destroyed for close to 2,000 years now, alive in the hearts of the Jewish people. So, of course, we tend to shun the notion of animal sacrifice. The temple worship, we tend to possibly, say it's superstitious or try to minimize its value, etc. But the truth is that if we're open enough and willing to allow it to speak to us, we recognize, I'm not saying that there aren't going to be elements regarding, so for example, animal sacrifice that we may have to struggle with and try to understand, but there's so much of this that if we at least try to put ourselves in the position of where is this coming from, to realize how powerful it really is.
And Rabbi, one of your many repeated phrases was that God is in the details.
Yes, exactly.
And when things are full of such complex detail, in order for us to study them, or in order for them to make the garments, or for us to study about the making of them or the temple, it's so much complex detail that it takes a lot of focus and energy from us to try to understand that, which also heightens the reward when we do go through that.
Absolutely. But it also, understand, there's one other little piece that we just haven't mentioned right now, but that's implied by what we're saying. It also links us to this whole chain of tradition, all the way down to the original fabricators of the Mishkan or the temple. It connects us because we're reading about it. There's actually a lovely, how can I put it, statement that's attributed to Rav Kook, who was questioned about the founders of Israel and the early pioneers, because he lived at that particular time. And there was a certain criticism of those early Zionists because it was seen as, that Israel is the holy land and these people weren't holy, etc. But they were developing the land and stuff. And Rav Kook was asked what his opinion was upon them. And he said, well, it's interesting. He said that the high priest only went into the Holy of Holies once a year. I mean, there's some discussion as to whether there were other times when he might go in and had to go through all the preparation that's described in the Yom Kippur ritual. But anyway, basically that he goes into the Holy of Holies once a year. But the people who constructed the tabernacle or the temple, they went to the Holy of Holies on a daily basis to construct it. Okay, and he points out, so he felt that there was the same value, that of those early sabras, those early pioneers who were actually trying to rebuild the land of Israel from its ruination. So just in terms of what we're doing today and how it emotionally connects us and the level of holiness one tries to achieve by doing these sorts of things and struggling with this material.
It also tells us that even though these were slaves and they made bricks and mud and, bricks out of mud and things like that, they were also metal workers, weavers, tailors,
Correct.
jewelers, and knew how to do all of these things.
They needed to be skilled. They
had to be skilled.
to
Right.
do these particular things. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Let's see what I can do here to try and get out of. There we go. Let's keep. We'll proceed a
The
little
collective,
bit. Go ahead.
the collective effort of everyone to gather this, like David was saying, that it's wealth, it's worth something too. And maybe the collective gathering of this, physical wealth of our people was done and transported in a way that it was small, but you needed to protect it too from being stolen. And so that collective wealth is protected as you go. And there were certain things, I'm sure, that were constructed where those garments were kept that did protect it. So maybe it was also, because some of those gemstones, they had a lot of wealth in them, and to have a ruby or an emerald of that size with that specific gravity and how to get it. I mean, the wealth was gathered, not just all at once. It didn't just, poof, appear. It was gathered over time. And then over time, we need to protect it because it's our collective wealth on many levels.
So one is, of course, that they had a lot of the stuff which they got from Egypt when they left because they were given, many gifts. The Egyptians couldn't wait to get rid of them, and so they piled them up with stuff, and here they were devoting it. But I want to make another point entirely, and that is the idea of needing protection. So if you put yourself in the position of where they were and their belief in the divine, and the experience of the divine. Remember, they were seeing this pillar of cloud during the day. They had heard the 10 Commandments being given. They weren't having any doubts about divine power. So the fact of the matter is to think that this was going to require human effort to guard it or something would be a misplaced belief in divine protection. In other words, if and incidentally, not to make compartmentalize this this effort here involving the construction and subsequently the service of the temple, to somehow compartmentalize that away from basically the service of every human being in terms of acting righteously, acting as divine servants, and attempting to perform the divine will. I don't think there'd be any doubt on the part of people who were believing, even to this day, that without divine protection, there's nothing a human being can do. And there've been enough examples in history of powerful countries or powerful people being overturned by people who would appear to be less powerful, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that I don't know that there'd be a tremendous, the concern about protecting these various material things would actually be based on a spiritual protection. And I think that applies to this day itself. And that is that without the spiritual undergirding, nothing else really counts for very much. And look, we see ourselves, how life can turn on a dime. Things can change very, very quickly if we aren't very careful about the spiritual components of things. So for better or for worse, they can go in that direction. So I think
in Scotland.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, I was in Scotland a couple years ago and they had Meghan Markle's wedding dress and wedding veil on display. And the veil was very elaborately embroidered with different flowers and plants of the British Isles. And it was obviously the best of the craftsmanship that the country could muster to create this garment. And in most countries, I think in most times, the best of the best craftsmanship has been drawn on for the rich and the powerful people. So in this case, we have the best of the best craftsmanship being drafted for the glory of God. Right.
And in terms of, human beings carrying these positions of, title and power and wealth and all that. I mean, I love the French expression, noblesse oblige, that when you're put in that particular position, it demands and goes along with it a sense of service, a sense of humility, that you recognize how privileged you are. I mean, to my mind, that is the antithesis of an attitude that says, all I'm doing is greedily grabbing whatever power or wealth or whatever, and let the rest of the world, let the devil take the rest who didn't make it. I mean, that's such a mark of civilization. And, I know I'm not the first one to say this by any means, but the mark of a great civilization, right? The measure of any great civilization is the degree to which it takes care of its underprivileged. That's the mark of a great civilization. And there's plenty, of course, in the Torah and elsewhere to underpin that. It's not a sin. It's because if you happen to be poor, it's not because you're somehow unworthy or wicked or anything like that. And so there's many, many halachot regarding how you take care of the poor and the underprivileged. And I so wish that we had that as part of our culture instead of an attitude that's self-absorbed and sees success as only personal success. So
My father of blessed memory used to say, a man with a heart of gold is worth more than a pocket full of it.
That's a great saying. That's lovely. That's definitely worth remembering. I'm going to stop the share now. And just thank you all for being here with me this morning. It's really lovely being able to study with all of you, truly. So I'm going to stop the recording and thank those who are checking it out.